What's up, guys? Welcome to the 13th episode of The Drum Break, where we talk about everything in, on, and about the percussion world. I'm Mike.
I'm Spencer.
So yeah, what do we got going on today?
Today we have another guest. If you've been keeping up with the podcast lately, we've been starting to get more guests on, and we want to try to tell some more drummers' stories, some of our friends' stories, stuff like that. And so we have one of our awesome buddies, super cool guy I met at college, Mr. Kabir Dalawari. What's going on, Kabir?
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being on.
So yeah, we're just gonna talk a little bit with Kabir about sort of his personal drumming story, experiences, cool things, sort of maybe opinions on different aspects of the drumming world. But before we get into that, Mike is going to plug all of our stuff.
So you can find us pretty much anywhere. Our main Instagram and Facebook page, that's where we check the most, especially Instagram, and that's the Drum Break Podcast. But as far as listening to us, we are on Apple Podcast, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, and then an awesome app called Podbean. Definitely check us out on Podbean if you don't have anything else, because that is like where we go off of. Podbean helps us, do all this stuff. So
yeah, host our podcast through there. And actually, if you are interested in starting your own podcast, we have an affiliate link you could use, www.podbean.com/drumbreak. And you can get a month free of their podcast hosting. If you have a buddy like us and want to start talking to the internet about stuff, it's a great service. So yeah, that's about everything.
That's it. Yeah.
So we'll get started with you, Kabir.
Cool.
Just a quick little introduction, I guess, for people who don't know you, maybe a little bit. We'll go more in depth about you as a drummer soon, but just a little introduction about like who you are, what you do, what your main sort of vibe is.
Cool. Yeah. So I'm Kabir, Chicago-based drummer, student, composer. I'm mainly a jazz drummer now. Super influenced by like the up and coming New York jazz scene, like the modern jazz thing. Wasn't always into that. It's been the past few years I've been into that, but pretty deep in there now, so trying to find my voice with all that stuff.
Yeah, man. Cool.
Sweet.
So yeah, Kabir and I met when we're both at Loyola Chicago doing some jazz school there.
Yeah.
And he's a grade older, so I came in as a freshman, he was a sophomore. And he was, not to flatter you right now, but a bit of a role model for me, at least. Because I mean, the jazz program at Loyola is great, but it's very small.
Yeah.
And Kabir was like the only other sort of serious jazz drummer besides me after coming in. So I definitely connected with him a lot through that, and sort of got to meet a super cool guy. So let's get into going a little bit back in your drumming journey. If you want to tell us sort of how you got started with maybe music in general and drums, maybe your first inspirations, and sort of your musical drumming journey up until now.
Yeah.
Start from the very beginning.
So Kabir was born.
It's been a bit of a roller coaster, honestly. A bit unconventional, but yeah. So I think the most conventional part of it is I started playing with piano lessons, like I feel like most people, when I was maybe 6 or 7 years old, and I absolutely hated it. Had a terrible teacher. Thought I just didn't have fun with learning classical piano, So I stuck with that for maybe 6 months, and then I was like, I don't like music.
Music is actually, it's terrible. I hate it.
So I think that was like 2nd or 3rd grade. So then for those next 2 years, I didn't really play music. I was actually like, my parents were super academically focused. So I was like just doing a bunch of extra stuff for school and whatnot. But then my mom, when I was getting into 5th grade, she was like, "All right, you're too much of a nerd. You need to do something outside of school." So she's like, "Join band." I'm like, "All right, I'll join band." And we had like auditions for band in 5th grade, but it was more like placement, like what instrument you're interested in, what you want to play. And surprisingly enough, my first pick was actually flute, which is kind of hilarious.
Whoa, dude,
Hey.
crazy. That's
You got another
exactly what happened to me too.
First flute player.
Okay,
man.
yeah. So my first pick was flute, but one had a lack of percussionists, and two, I guess they said because of my asthma, I didn't have the lung support to play flute. So they're like,
You're literally the same person.
Literally the same person. See, but I was more like I wanted to play flute because I saw a guy on YouTube beatbox the Mario theme song while playing flute. So I was like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah, I wanted to play flute because like my older cousin, who's like my he's like a brother to me, honestly. He played flute, so super inspired me. But yeah, so they're like, "Do you have any piano experience?" And I was like, "Yeah, I got like 2 years of piano experience. I can barely read music. I know
Definitely
like
serious piano.
I know like my C major scale. That's it." And they're like, "Okay, so we'll put you on percussion." And so that was like 5th grade, and then man, all these other percussionists, like I feel like they had so much percussion experience and I had none. So I'd start off on like triangle and like cymbals, and I don't think I played snare drum for the first time till like 7th grade. So I was like, I don't know. I guess I was like one of the worst people. So I wasn't super serious about it. But I guess what made me serious about it, there was this girl who was in my grade. I'm not gonna name her name because I don't want to like throw her under the bus. But we're cool now. But basically, through middle school and high school, we had like a big rivalry about like who's the better drummer.
That's funny.
And she like had the natural gift for it, but I guess I had more the work ethic. So I was always behind, but I worked my butt off in 7th, 8th grade, throughout high school. And then high school came along. I got pretty serious about marching band, and that made the rivalry even more serious. Cause we're like, who's gonna get center snare? Who's gonna get center snare?
Right.
My first 2 years, I didn't make snare, and she did. I was on bass my first 2 years, and my 3rd year as a junior, I made snare. We both did, but I got center snare, which I don't know how that makes any sense because I didn't have any experience on snare. But I guess the faculty just saw I was going at it and I was trying really hard or whatever. So that changed everything for me because I was like, okay, it's not really about where you start or your experience. It's about what you do in the moment. So I guess that year really changed it for me when I was about 16, 17, junior year. And I was like, I want to get serious about drums. And throughout this time, I was playing drum set, obviously. Like I was in jazz band and whatnot. But marching band was definitely my thing at first in high school. So then what made me serious about drum set, which kind of concurrently happened with all this, I was super into like pop punk, progressive, mathy music.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah, so I was like super into like time signature stuff and like linear patterns and
I feel
gospel
like that's
chops.
every sort of early like teenage drummer,
Dude,
like math rock,
Yeah,
chops,
dude. And every like as you keep talking, I'm like in my head, I'm like, where was this kid when we were in high school? Like, you should have been in our high school.
The same experience.
Literally, we literally to the T have had the same experience. It's so funny.
Yeah, actually, you guys probably know Luke Holland, right? Yeah, I actually took a few lessons with Luke Holland around this time too.
No way.
Which is super cool. A really nice guy. Not the greatest teacher, but he does just like give you stuff. He like gives you everything. Like he gave me all these concepts and like rhythmic displacement ideas that blew my mind as a high schooler because I would have never thought of stuff. Like it all makes sense now after all these years, but back then I was like, whoa. So that was kind of game changing for me. Throughout this whole time I was in jazz band, but I didn't really like jazz. I just liked the drum set. I liked the drum set. I was in a few bands. We played like soul music. One was like a pop punk band. One was more like a fusion kind of thing. And I guess my drum set chops just kept getting better and better. But no, I didn't really like jazz. So what changed it for me with jazz was, I think it was my junior year. We went to the New Trier Jazz Festival every year. And I remember watching all those like high schoolers and those combos, and I'm like, how do you play like that? Like,
Oh man.
who taught you how to do that? Because we didn't even have combo in our high school. We only had the big band.
Yeah.
So I had no experience playing in small group. I had no idea how any of that worked. And I'm just like seeing these guys like super interactive, super in the moment. I'm like, how are you able to do all that?
It's so amazing, especially even in this area. It's like there's some pretty high level high school jazz musicians.
Yeah, well,
it's crazy.
Especially, because like you said, New Trier, they don't have a marching band. So
Mhm.
that's all they
Yeah.
do is jazz band and concert band. So like that's that like that. And we went there too. We were, for our high school, we
Yeah,
were there as
New
well.
Trier Jazz
So we know
Fest.
exactly what you're talking about. It's just like some of those kids are just ridiculous.
Blew me
and
away, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, how did they do that? And I guess luckily with my personality, I took that as inspiration instead of like lack of
I wanna
motivation, like
quit.
losing motivation.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of people do. It's like you see people. I mean, I still to this day, this young drummer Raghav Malhotra. You guys seen him on Instagram?
Oh yeah, on Instagram. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like 15, 16, and he
He's so
plays
good.
everything I want to play, but like 10 times better. I'm like, wow, I should give up.
Freaking,
Or like JD Beck.
JD Beck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I should just stop now.
Yeah.
And I've talked to people about it, and they're like, they have a bit of a negative connotation towards that. They're like, nah, I can't learn from someone younger than me. And I'm like, I mean, I
Why
would
not?
transcribe them if I want.
Oh,
like,
yeah, of
if I really
course.
want to learn how they play, I'll transcribe them.
It's I think it's sort of something one of my buddies has told me. It's like age, like your physical age and like your musical age, I guess, are like separate. So even though people like JD Beck are, younger than me, and it might be like, oh man, you're learning from a 15-year-old, musically as a drummer, he's, way older than me, quote. So
Yeah.
I mean, you can always find stuff to learn, from people in that way.
Yeah, and I think it's fascinating. Like those kind of people can find their niche that fast. Cause like just like with my story, like it took me like trying all this stuff out to really figure out what I want to do musically. But it's like figuring that out when you're like a child. Like that's like I feel like that's just
Crazy.
special gene or something. Like you're just born for that. Like actually,
Yeah.
So like to finish off my story, I guess. Yeah, our jazz program wasn't great, but I took lessons with this teacher who teaches at St. Xavier University, which was about 20 minutes from my house. He was a drum set teacher there. His name's Brett Baxter. And he, I studied with him for about 6 months. And those 6 months, he really opened up to me, like, what jazz is. He gave me a lot of good records to listen to. Like, the most fundamental comping stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But he taught all that to me. And I think that really opened it up for me. And I was like, okay, I think I'm starting to understand how this works. And at that point, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do in college. I was kind of leaning towards pre-med, but I wanted to still do music. So I was like, maybe I'll go to Loyola because, they have a really good medicine kind of thing. And Brett's the one that told me, he's like, John Deitemeyer's like incredible drummer. I hadn't heard of him at that time. I hadn't heard of him at that time at all, but he's like, I would take lessons from him. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Oh.
So then I ended up picking Loyola. And I don't regret it at all. Like you were saying, it's a small jazz program. But to add to your point, I think the faculty, all of them are just
Oh yeah,
insane.
amazing. Yeah.
And I don't go to the school that you guys go to, but I can say that out of most of the jazz things that I've seen, they've all been killer. Like it's small, but everybody's there because they want to be there and they want to play, and like jazz is the thing that they're doing. And it probably helps because you're in the city, and where there's city there's jazz. You know what I mean? Like that's what at least I tie it to. But yeah, you guys are always like killing it, wherever you're playing and whatever you're playing. So
yeah,
Right.
for sure.
And I have a student right now who's a senior in high school, and he's like trying to go to jazz school, and he was asking about like Loyola and like other programs. Because I mean, at this point I have a bunch of friends that went to like all these other colleges, so I've heard like the T and like the pros and the cons.
Yeah.
And he's like, how did you like do well at Loyola? And I'm like, I think it's because one, the faculty, and two, I took that extra time to really explore the city, and try networking and meeting people and going to shows and stuff. Because I think that's what it really is. Like the school is just like a little box for you. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
the school's not gonna give you everything. You're not gonna come out of the school and have like a touring gig. No,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it's just providing you a place to learn, like
It's the
practice.
people, it's the experiences, and nothing to knock any of these jazz programs like in other states or stuff like that, because I'm sure that like the faculty there and the people there are great, but you're going to like jazz school in, I don't know, Champaign or something or somewhere else. It's just not the same as being in Chicago. I'm sure there is a scene there, but
Mhm.
it's just a little bit different.
Yeah, just like you said, like the main, like at the end of the day, like we play music because we love to, but the only way we do so is by talking with other people and networking. That is the biggest part of music in general. And because if you can't do that, then you have no shows, then there's no point in practicing because you're not making any money, and whatever it may be. If that's how you think, like you said, it's just like I'm sure I don't like 3 jazz clubs off the top of my head that I've been to, or 4 maybe that I've been to, and I'm sure there's hundreds of more that I have no idea about, and most of them have been with you guys, going to see you guys play and stuff. And it's just like, that's the cool thing about it. It's just like a bunch of people who just love jazz, and they just like, hey man, like that was really good, you should come to my rehearsal sometime, like come play with us.
Yeah.
Be like, yeah, for sure, or whatever it may be.
It's definitely the social aspect that I think draws a lot of people to the music.
Yeah. At Loyola, like my first year here, before you were there, and where it was like nearly no one. There's a senior trumpet player who was a jazz major. There's some guy who went to law school and came back for a second degree who was a jazz major. And then it was Eric, who's not a jazz major, but Eric is insane.
So crazy.
And I'm gonna give a quick shout out to Eric, because I think he was my like role model when I got here. I remember we had our first big band rehearsal, and it was like all right, like Loyola big band. It was all right.
Yep.
It was cool. But he took a solo, and I was like, wow, that guy can play. And I was like, I gotta like become his friend. Like somehow I gotta be his friend. And somehow we ended up in combo together, and we developed a really good friendship. But man, I think he really turned it around for me too. Like he introduced me to a lot of really good music, and till this day, he still holds me so accountable. Like we still play together all the time. But he's always like, "Hey, dude, you could have done that better," or like something like that. Like out of like love, like not on a bad way, but it's
Yeah,
like,
of course.
he's like a big brother, kind of like, even though he's only like a year older than me. It's just he's got that like older like wisdom.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
So he's turned around for me a lot. But yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that's a sort of common thing with musician friends, is that the people who sort of stay the best friends are also the people who hold each other accountable musically. That's how Mike and I got to be such good friends, that like one of us would sort of move up, and we'd be like, hey man, how do you do that? How do you do that? How can I get better at this? And we just keep going back and forth with each other. And I find that is the same with some of my other best musical friends, that we have that sort of level of our friendship where we can say, hey man, that you could have done that better, let me help you, sort of thing, which I think is really important. And it's great that you have someone like that in Eric, and we have people like that. I think every musician should have someone like that.
Dude, I even have that in you, Spencer. I remember, I think junior year, I was like walking in Mundelein, and I heard someone practicing. I thought it was John, dude. It was you. You were killing it.
Man.
I'm not even joking. That happened. I never told you, but like, no, that definitely happened.
Dang,
so I think we can
man.
all learn from each other, and
Definitely
got to keep it all positive and love based. That's the only way to grow,
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
Love based, bro.
For sure.
For real,
So it was sort of your drumming story. Awesome to hear all that stuff. I wanted to touch on one thing that you mentioned before, about your sort of want to go to medical school before. I feel like, at least maybe for me when I was younger, and a lot of young musicians, it can be sort of intimidating, I guess, to quote, maybe like put all your eggs in one basket and like go to music school and do that as your only thing. Were you I think you touched on this a little bit. Were you more thinking of neuroscience? Is it your other major? Were you
Yeah.
thinking of that more as like sort of a backup plan, or maybe music was the backup plan?
Mm.
Or are you trying to think of them more as sort of interconnected pieces of one sort of career that you might want to? I
I
don't
think
know.
I think throughout my college career, I've been in all three of those positions, and I think I've had this conversation with people a lot of my age and even younger. Like if I'm talking to someone about college, it's really hard to know what you really want when you're 17, 18 years
Yep,
old. You know,
it's crazy.
you know, we're seniors in high school, and high school is just kind of an illusion. You know, you're just doing a lot of fun extracurricular stuff. Obviously, you're learning a little bit, but it's a lot about it's just like growing as a person and meeting friends and stuff. So how do you have the maturity to make that decision when you haven't experienced anything yet?
Right.
And I feel like your first couple years of college, when you're on your own, and whether you're in the city or you're like you have a car, you're driving around, that's when you get to meet people and learn what's really out there. So I guess when I first got to Loyola, my plan was med school, music on the side because I do like music. It's a passion of mine. Halfway through, half and half, you know. I still consider this like I want to do like a PhD, like music cognition kind of thing.
Mm.
Right now, it's almost flipped. Like I'm gonna do a master's in jazz studies at this point. You know?
Yeah, I want to say congratulations. You just posted on Facebook some pretty prestigious higher education programs in jazz. So just congrats on that, man.
Thank
Big
you.
stuff.
Yeah. So like now it's kind of flipped, and I would not be surprised if there was still a little more decision making because I'm still young, you know.
Exactly.
We're in our like super early 20s, like, so yeah. But to go on your point that it's hard to put all your eggs in one basket. I think that's a lot of just society, you know. It's very difficult for anyone that's not an artist to accept art as a career in any sort of way. You know, even though all they do in their free time is listen to art, watch art, look at art, appreciate art.
Yeah.
Like, where do you think that comes from?
You know, like probably more of their day than they're working, they're appreciating some sort of art, whether they know it or not. So that's a society thing, and I think only you or I can figure that out for themselves. What really means something to us,
sure.
You know.
Because I definitely felt that way a little bit. You know, from high school, I always knew that music was like what I wanted my life to sort of revolve around.
Yeah.
But you know, when we were getting up there senior year, everyone was, you know, saying, "Oh, I'm going to this school. I'm going to this school." I started, you know, maybe second guessing. It's like, is music like the most viable thing for me to do right now? Like, I don't know. It was just sort of, and you know, I'm sure a lot of other musicians have this sort of, I don't know, imposter syndrome type thing. It's like, well, oh man, these guys are so much better than me. How am I even going to make a career for myself in this? So I did experience some something like that where it's like, oh man, I'm not sure. And then once I got to school, it's like, I don't know, you just start learning all this new stuff and gaining more appreciation for it than maybe you even had before. And I also discovered that I wanted to add a psychology major, because a little bit maybe to have a sort of backup plan like you were talking about, but I also had an interest since high school. Someone came over from, I think maybe like Western Illinois University or something, and gave a talk, and they're like, "Oh, there's this thing called music therapy." Yeah. I'm like, wow, that's so cool. And it sort of left my mind since high school. But in college, I started getting interested in it again. It's like, maybe that's something I want to do with my life. And so I picked up the psychology major. It's been a lot of work. I'm sure neuroscience has been a lot of work.
When you said that, I was like, oh yeah, it's just neuroscience. Whatever, like neuroscience on the side and jazz is the thing. What? I'm like, what? Like, that's crazy. I'm glad. I'm so happy that you can actually do that, because my brain would not be able to do that.
It's hard, man. You know, and I've taught. I've had so many lessons with John. Like, I'm thankful John's such a like understanding and great teacher.
Oh,
I'm like last week I couldn't practice. I had like 3 exams, and I had like a gig or two. Like, I'm sorry. And he's like, nah, it's cool, man.
And the same, like, I feel like music is one of those things where it's sort of deceptive how much work you actually have to put in. And you combine that with neuroscience or even a different major, an additional major, and it's like it can get to be a lot, but I, I think it just boils down to your passion for it, and if you'll find time and you'll be able to work it out if it's something that you're really interested in.
That you super care about. It's just like, see, I've on the, going off of what you said, both of you, like, splitting the music eggs basket thing. That's all I'm doing. Like, there was this thing in our high school where it was like, oh yeah, try out for like our music teachers conference thing or future music educators thing. And I did it and I didn't make it, even though that I was like, I killed it, dude. I like, everybody told me I killed it. Like, and then I didn't end up making it. And this other girl went because she was like, oh, I'm going to do music education. So super passionate about it. And then she goes to college 2 years in, or not even like a year in, just quits music education. And like me, I'm over here, like, how much that would have helped me if I just did that, like, and nobody just like stopped me from doing that. Cause then the following year they didn't have it. So like, I couldn't do it again. And so like, it sucked super bad, but like, yeah, man, I mean, it's weird,
That's back to my point where it's like in high school, you think you want something, but you don't really know yet. Like, you haven't experienced anything. Oh, I want to study music because that's all I know. That's why a lot of people major in music. Like, that's all I know. Not because they think they could actually put the time and the work into.
It's what I'm good at right now, you know? And that's just, this could be a whole different conversation about like college in general. I feel like this sort of transition between high school and college and putting all these kids, asking them to sort of, I guess, decide their lives when they're 17, 18 years old. That's why I know a lot of people who just like took gap years and wanted to go sort of experience life more, I guess. And there's like pros and cons to each: going to college right away, taking a gap year, not going to college, what have you. But I think it's tough. It's tough for young people, and it's still tough for 20 somethings to try and find a path in life.
And I strongly advocate that it's never too late to figure that out. And gonna give another shout out to one of my other mentors, Dana Hall. You guys probably know Dana Hall. He's like the Chicago drummer. You guys might know this, might not. He worked for NASA before, like,
I just recently found that out. I was reading up on him for whatever reason, and I saw he's like, his first degree is like aerospace something. I'm like, what?
Yep. So, and now he's undisputed like Chicago drum set king, right?
God,
both educator and performer. So it's like he figured it out when he was in his 30s. We're not 20. Like, everyone puts so much pressure on your 20s, but we're still very young. There's still a lot to learn,
There are so many, people that we would consider jazz legends of past who got their start when they were like 20, 25, 30 years old. And like, now we look back on them and they're like, oh man, these guys are so great. They must have been playing since they were out of the womb. But that's just, and
it's different too, because you said, like, looking back, there's all these great, jazz musicians and musicians in general, like, there's all these great people. But like, if you think about it from then to now, like, now there's so much pressure to go to college, find a good job, and to be in that job right out of college, making 3 figures. Like, they push that so hard. At least at our high school that we went to, that was it. Like, if you didn't do that to the T, like, you're a failure. Like, you're less than everybody else. Like, and it sucked because, like, there's a lot of kids there who probably would have made really awesome musicians. But like, unfortunately, like, just because society and things cost more and people are so focused around money, like, they choose a different route. but are still playing music on the side, or not at all. Like there's a lot of kids that, we've seen that are like great, and then they just like stop playing music. So it's weird.
Topic I wanted to hit on, which is sort of, I guess, your experience with private music education, because I know that you teach a lot of lessons, and
Yes. Not a
apparently
lot, but yeah.
well, apparently
I
are
try
pretty
to,
good from the stuff that I've seen, it's like reviews from students and stuff. So I just wanted to maybe pick your brain a little bit,
Sure.
about sort of your process, when it comes to that, because private lessons is something that I feel like can be very subjective, based on the student or the teacher, what have you. So I don't know if you wanted to share just a little bit of your experience with that, and maybe
Like what's the age range you teach, and
what sort of things, tools that you use
find
or
useful.
something to educate the youngins.
Yeah, I mean, I'm by no means an expert on this because I feel like I'm still a student, myself. But I'm trying. And I think to give a preface to like talking about lesson in general, I think it's really hard to teach private lessons unless it's through like an institution of some sort, whether it's like a small music school or like a high school, middle school, whatever it is, because at least in my experience, I'm sure everyone has different experiences, but when you have like a private student that just hits you up, it tends to be very inconsistent. There's gonna be weeks where maybe they are sick, or maybe maybe they can't make the lesson that week. But just the consistency and the effort isn't usually there with that kind of thing. And the students I have had that have just like either hit me up like on Instagram or like via email, that maybe lasts like 2-3 months max, and then they move on. And my like solid experience teaching was when it was, let's see, 2019 winter into like 2020, right before COVID. So like those like 8 months, I thankfully got like a partnership with Sen High School, which is like a high school right by Loyola. And I taught 3 of the percussion students there. And it was super cool because Sen paid for the lessons, so like the students didn't have to pay for it, and which is nice because Chicago public schools aren't funded super well anyways, and maybe more likely than not probably couldn't afford private lessons. So that was really cool, and those 3 students were really serious, I think. And in terms of like my methods of teaching, I think a lot of that's adapted from how I've been taught, and then just like slightly adjusted based on a student's learning style. Like one of my students, the one who's going to college right now that I briefly mentioned about earlier, we just had our last lesson, which is bittersweet.
Oh man,
that's another thing to talk about. But he was like, I want to learn how to play jazz. I want to go to jazz school. So I was like, all right, let's go. Comping, art of bop drumming, comping. Yeah. We're gonna learn some solo vocab, talk about Elvin, Tony, all this good stuff. Like that was killing. Like I didn't even have to think about those lessons. So I was like, that's all I've worried about the past 4 or 5 years.
Right.
The other 2 students that were just like, I want to play drums. That's a lot more tough because I think it's really important to know why you want to play drums, and sometimes younger people can't articulate that super well. And I don't think I could have articulated it when I was 15, 16 either. I was like, I like drums. I don't know why. I just like drums.
They're cool.
And I'm like, what drummers do you like? They don't know that many drummers yet. They're like, I like Thomas Pridge, and I was like, okay, well, I don't know if that's the first thing we could start with. What about like what kind of music do you like? Oh, I like pop music. I was like, all right, well, maybe we can just talk about like funk grooves or backbeat based stuff. I think the most success from lessons is usually when the student has some sort of inspiration, and then the teacher can like take that and mold it into something or help guide them to that. And I've noticed that in my experience too, because I've taken a bunch of one-off lessons with like really good drummers. Like I said, Luke Holland earlier, but even like in the past few years, like I've taken lessons with Dana Hall. I took a lesson with George Flutis, who's another really good Chicago drummer. New York drummer Kwaku Sumbri. I don't know if you know who he is.
Okay.
He's on Emmanuel Wilkins' new album.
Oh, okay. I'll have to check that out.
He's killing, and he's like super young. I think he's 24. I'm like, shoot.
Dang.
Like I took a lesson with him. Who else? Kyle Poole, who's another New York drummer. So I've done a bunch of these one-off lessons, and the more and more I do them, I've come to realize it's like I need to know what I want to get out of the lesson before going there.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's why it's harder to teach younger students, because they don't really know that yet. So you have to kind of force something on them and hope they like it, and adjust and adjust and adjust. But
Yeah, well, thank you for telling me about that too, because I know you focus with more younger kids. And is that like middle school too, or
I had
mostly high
one,
school?
yeah, I had one student that was like in middle school, but that is another, you know, problem with it, where they're probably even less focused or determined.
Yeah.
And I know there are people out there, like there are kids out there that really have a passion for it, but a lot of them, it's because their parents are kind of forcing it on them. I don't know. And then I noticed like with those kids, shorter lessons work better too. Like if someone's not in high school, I would not give them more than a 30-minute lesson, more likely than not, unless we've been working together already. I can tell that they can handle it. Because then it just, I don't know, they lose focus or just not as super productive, right?
Yeah, and like you said, like some of the younger kids like don't really have that passion yet for it, right? And that's like the best thing as teachers that I think that we can do is, we're just like, this is such a cool thing, like let me show you how passionate I am about it. And and then they see that and they're like, wow, well this this teacher is like screaming and yelling about how much he loves drums, like the drums must be pretty cool, or whatever you're teaching must be pretty
teach
cool.
By example and have them like through osmosis, I guess, of your passion for it,
and I guess
to develop.
I gave a bit of the negative side first, but that is the positive side. All my students, I introduced them to a lot of music of all kinds of genres, and most of them are like, whoa, we didn't know there's music beyond the radio, kind of thing, like they haven't grown up in a culture like that where maybe their parents or their friends introduced them to all this cool music that maybe I had when I was younger. It's like when they think of jazz, they think of like In the Mood and Take 5. They don't realize that there's Tony Williams, Art Blakey, Elvin Jones, all this super intense cool stuff. Or even like Glasper, like Today, or like Kamasi Washington, where it's like hip hop influenced jazz, which most people really resonate with. And then they like that, and then they're like, okay, I'm gonna go back in time. That was kind of my thing, I started more with the mom stuff, and I went a little back in time.
I feel like that's a really good way to get people into new music, is to sort of introduce them to something tangentially related to stuff that they already like, and then maybe take them further down the rabbit hole. Well, this is actually comes from this, which comes from this, and pretty soon they're singing Charlie Parker solos or whatever.
Dude. That's the only way, right?
So you've mentioned a bunch of stuff about like doing the jazz thing and being the jazz guy. So we're just gonna stay on that topic, I guess.
Sure.
So like, what do you listen to? Like, what are your things? Like, is it just like the standard notion of jazz, or is it like, what are these subcategories that you just like can't get away from?
Ooh, that's a really good question. And that's a hard question to answer, because I want to say my palette is very diverse, but I don't even want to say that, because I know there's people that have a much more diverse palette than me. But I'd say I have a relatively diverse palette. And I try to stick with some kind of, whether it's era of time or artist or drummer, whatever the case is, for at least a week or 2 weeks or a month at a time. I'm not a fan of, having a huge playlist of a bunch of unrelated music, because I feel like there's two times and places to listen to music. Obviously, you can listen to it for fun, but then you can obviously learn it to like educate yourself and take something from it. And as a jazz studies student, I think majority of my listening should be intentional. Like right now, I usually tend to focus on 2 to 3 drummers at a time. Maybe substitute one of those drummers for another instrument player. So like right now, I'm listening a lot of Roy Haynes, who I think is my favorite drummer at the time. Right now, a lot of Roy Haynes, Marcus Gilmore, who's his grandson.
Yeah.
They're both still alive, actually. Roy Haynes is 96. He just turned 96.
Man.
I hope I live
Still
to
play.
96. Still playing.
Yeah, his grandson Marcus, who is maybe 30-ish now. I don't know his exact age. And then Kwaku Sumbry, the guy I mentioned I took a lesson with.
Yeah.
Only charged me $20 for a lesson. God.
Dang.
For 30 minutes?
No, for an hour.
What?
Yeah.
Should have been like,
Dang.
I'm like, I would charge
that's
more
a
than
steal,
that.
man.
Right?
I was like, I should charge like $10 at that rate,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, right.
But that was like the first lesson rate. He's like, if you do more, it'll probably more. But one lesson was enough for me. But yeah. So, and I try to listen to the connection between that music. You know, like Roy Haynes. Okay, now see the jazz police is gonna come for me because you know there's so many ways to look at certain things.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, and from my understanding and my experience, I think Roy Haynes is really the first or one of the first people to start phrasing on the ride cymbal away from the traditional Spang-a-lang pattern. And it's gonna get drummy and nerdy for a sec.
That's
but-
fine. That's what it's for, bro.
Yeah.
That's why we're here, is to get drummy and nerdy.
But for me, that sound when the ride cymbal is the anchor and all the comping is based on what the ride cymbal is doing, that sound it's so special to me. Like like that's how I want to play. Like that's what speaks to me for whatever reason. I can't put it into words. It's just a different kind of energy. And if you look at records from that time, it's not many people do that. And if they do, it's very sparsely. But Roy, it's like he'll play an entire song without the hi-hat on 2 and 4. Like where like the ride cymbal is just like playing like groupings of 5, grouping of 7, whatever it is. And he makes it work so well. And he was like a pioneer to that. And like him and Chick Corea. Chick Corea also recently passed away, rest in peace. Another legend. But they both really pushed jazz to I think what it is today. And then you listen to his grandson, Marcus Gilmore. He's taking those ideas to like an alien platform.
Yeah.
Where
He's so good, man.
Where I know in like 60, 70 years from now when we're all like, well, maybe not 60, like 40, 50 years from now.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I'm like, hopefully we're alive in 60, 70 years.
Yeah.
But like 40, 50 years when we're like older people that we talk about our times, there are going to be these books about Marcus Gilmore's comping and how to solo like Marcus Gilmore. And I'll be like, where was this when I was a kid, right?
Can't wait.
But no, yeah. So just listening to that lineage, I think just those two drummers, there's so much to learn. But then there's so many other great drummers. So I think I went on a bit of tangent, but I hope that kind of makes sense. I try connecting what I'm listening to.
Yeah.
Like if I'm listening to someone modern, I try listening to who influenced them. Like when I listen to Eric Harland, I try listening to Tony Williams at the same time. Because I hear the influence. I don't 100% know that that's his main influence, but it sounds like it to me. So I go with that.
Yeah. What do they say? You're like I don't know the exact figure, but it's like you're 80% your teacher and like, you know, the rest yourself, like, you know, that 20% or whatever, if whatever math works out for that.
Whatever, man.
You know, it's just like you said, like, you know, and that's a really interesting way of thinking about it. I never thought about that because now I'm going to be doing that all the time. You know, that's such a cool thing to do because we've had this conversation before just recently with a couple of our other music friends. Like, can you listen to music while you're doing like mundane tasks around the house? Because some people can't. Like some musicians can't. Like I can just listen to music and not pay attention to it and just like it's just in the background. Like even when I'm like studying or whatever it may be. But like actively listening to music and then taking that to another level to then listening to what that person was listening to.
Getting so meta.
No, I mean, man. I think listening to music for fun is definitely a thing. I would never listen to new music for fun though. Like fun is the wrong word. Leisurely. I would never like, if someone's like, hey, check out this album, I think you might dig it, whether it's a friend or a teacher of mine. I'm not gonna put that on while I'm like working out. Like that's like disrespectful. I think if anything. I feel that
too. Like the music I listen to leisurely is stuff that I already know.
Yeah,
like,
you know that at the back of your hand. Yeah, right.
But I don't know why, but the Black Eyed Peas just popped in my head for some reason. I was about to be like, do you listen to Black Eyed Peas leisurely? It's like, or actively.
I actually listen to Black Eyed Peas actively. There's a lot of
Gotta see what Fergie's doing.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
you mentioned that you've led or you've been a part of a bunch of bands. Have you ever like led any bands? Like you're like the band leader? I know that's like a weird thing in the jazz world.
The Kabir
but
Dalawari experience.
Yeah.
I mean, like the main group I play with a lot now, and I know Spencer's seen Fission a bunch of times. I don't know if you've seen us, or maybe you've seen videos of us.
Yeah, I think I have.
Yeah. That's as close to it as it gets right now, and that's like co-led. Like I guess I'm technically the leader because I book the gigs and I like organize rehearsals. But the music we play is always co-written.
Yeah.
So it's like if we play two sets of like 6 songs each set, maybe 4 out of those 12 will be mine.
Okay.
3 or 4 would be like the guitarist, 3 or 4 would be the piano player.
So how do you deal with, managing, I don't want to say managing, but like leading a band on and off stage? So like you mentioned that, off stage would be like making the gigs and doing the rehearsals and co-writing some of the pieces. So I guess you answered that part of the question. So then what about like on stage? Are you the one who's like calling out stuff while you're playing?
Yeah. I think since this group has history and chemistry, like we've played together for maybe 2 years now, which I think isn't a long time, but it's long enough. Where we know like the circulating music pretty much. And when someone writes a new song, usually they're responsible enough to get it to everyone a couple weeks out and we learn it, and we all know our writing style at this point. Where like when the guitarist writes a song, I know what he's going to want. He wants something a little heavier, little Mark Juliana-esque, like complicated stuff. Yeah. That's just like, that's his sound. Yeah. And then there's be one section where there's like a breakdown where I go on my trash crash. That's his sound.
Yes.
I'm not, and no, it's great. It's God, great.
Yeah,
but like so I know how to approach his music, and I think that's what's cool about co-leading a band. On the other hand, like if I got hired to play all original music with someone I don't know, now that's tough because it's like, what do you want me to sound like? Is there a certain record you want me to like reference? Like how do you want me to play? Especially if it's original music. I think that's like one of the coolest and hardest things about playing original jazz. Is you're not like relying on the Spangling quarter note ride cymbal pattern.
Yeah.
You're playing basically
you're writing your own part. Yeah.
Right. It's like you have the melody and maybe some indication by the composer. Usually not even that. Usually they'll just give you the melody and be like, play. What do I play? Right. And I think I think it's cool when you are like close with the other band members where you can talk about it. Like we workshop our ideas.
Cool.
To the point where it's like everyone kind of knows what my drum part is, even though if there's variation. Because obviously I'm not gonna play the exact same thing every time. It's not a pop record.
Oh,
but like
shots fired.
But like they'll know like where I put the backbeats for the most part, or like what part of the tune I'll go to the ride bell, something like that.
Yeah. I think that goes back to the whole social aspect that I think draws people to this music. It's such a collaborative medium, especially in jazz and stuff like that. But before, I think we're just about starting to wrap it up here. We have some more fun questions, but before we get into that, just maybe a little brief thing, if you have like maybe a specific super cool drumming story or experience, or maybe
something funny,
something you're excited about in the future, just sort of whatever is
cool
on your
things,
mind.
stupid stories, whatever, just as long as they're PG-13. He's like, I don't have any of those.
Sorry to put you on the spot.
I don't know, I guess there's this one time me and one of my best friends who is also like one of my competition in high school, his name's Steve. Spencer, you probably know Steve.
Yeah.
We went to high school together, and we always, it's kind of a similar relationship with like what you guys have, I would say. But like our senior year of high school, there was like a pep rally parade kind of thing, and we were both marching snare, and there's like all these football players and cheerleaders everywhere. And they're like, have a drum battle, and we were like so awkward and uncomfortable about it because we're like, what? And then we had a drum battle. on video. It's terrible.
You have to send me this.
It's god awful.
Yeah,
right?
we need to see this.
Yeah.
It's god awful, and we're like basically like trading like solos of like maybe 8 bars or something.
Okay.
And the crowd is dead. Like no one's vibing with it. I'm like, why is this happening? And then like in my mind, I'm like, if I do a stick flip, I'm gonna lose their shit. I do like some kind of roll rudiment thing, flip my stick and nail it. And I was like, ah!
Dude.
Everyone freaks out.
That's so
and,
funny.
and then he did the same thing, and then the energy was just like crazy. It was so funny.
Man,
I don't know
so
if that's
cool.
a good story, but it just
Yeah.
goes, I don't know. I think it just goes to show
Great
that
story.
people really like showmanship, especially if they're not musicians. They don't really know what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it looks cool, then hey, man.
Then it sounds cool.
All right. Yeah. So we just have some
These are just
some
like
little fun questions
yeah.
to finish it up here.
nothing
Cool.
serious. Well, we got maybe one, but the first one we always ask, and it's always the best question: do you sing in the shower? And if so, what song?
Man,
I don't know why we always ask this one.
Because it's
not
the
like
best one.
okay. I would say I always sing in the shower, but when I do, I'd sing like Alicia Keys or something like that. You know, like
Oh, okay.
I can't actually sing it, but like it just
Yeah.
I don't know. Alicia Keys just hits, man. I love her vocals. She's an incredible
man.
artist.
She's got that
like,
sad shower music.
like Ariana Grande. I knew.
Oh, Ariana
that
Grande
you're-
too.
You're
Yup.
big into.
Yup.
Yeah.
Yep, her too. How can I forget? I feel so rude.
Oh,
Yeah, no,
yeah,
I
man.
love Ariana. Ari. You guys ever watch her thing with Domi and JD Beck?
Yes.
Yes.
dude.
Thundercat.
And
That
Thundercat
was
Oh my
cool.
gosh,
So cool.
it slaps.
Yep.
Let's see what else we got here. What's the most useless talent you have?
I can solve a Rubik's Cube in like 35 seconds.
No way.
That's not useless, man.
That's
That
pretty
sounds
useful.
sick.
No, it's useless because if I want to compete, it's got to be like under like 6 seconds. I'm never
Yeah.
gonna get there. Well, I mean, I might, but I don't think I
Dude,
could.
I know some kid who went to our high school, and I was friends with him like in middle school. He held like the world record for a little bit.
Yeah.
For like how
That's
fast
cool.
you can solve a Rubik's Cube. Yeah, it's
and
insane.
didn't you also do like yo-yos and stuff too?
He might do like yo-yo tricks
Yeah.
and stuff like that, but yeah, that kind of stuff.
And
is
then like
cool.
cup
It's-
stacking, those are like the 3 like
Oh, dude,
like
yes.
things under that like niche. Cup
Dude,
stacking. Yeah.
My niece is doing that in like elementary school. Did you guys also have that as like a unit in your school?
Like a PE unit.
Yes,
cup
like a PE
stacking.
unit was like cup stacking.
That's so funny.
It was crazy. Yeah, we did that.
That's funny. That's funny.
Got one
Yeah.
more, 2 more.
Let's see. I'm looking if you can find a good one.
Yeah, dude.
Where is your most favorite place you've performed?
Oh, House of Blues. I performed at House of
House of
Blues when I
Blues,
was
cool.
a senior in high school. It was really cool.
That's sick.
If you could, let's do this one. If you could open for any musician, who would it be?
Ariana Grande.
Honestly, that'd be
Open
pretty
for-
sick.
Yeah, dude. Honestly, oh man, I think it would have to be someone like that, like Ariana Grande or like Beyonce, Bruno
Oh,
Mars,
yeah. Beyonce, so
like
good.
at the Super Bowl. No,
Yeah. Dude,
Anything you
Kabir
want, man.
Dalawari at the Super Bowl.
bro, you ever hear the drummers on those like at the Super Bowl? Like it was like
Oh,
Six
so
Taylor.
good.
Oh my god, man,
Well,
crazy.
I just saw like on the Grammys, I saw Nate Smith playing along with someone at the Grammys, and I was like, wait, is that like who I think it is? Like it
Nate
was so cool.
Smith.
He's one of my favorite drummers, maybe
Oh,
my
yeah.
favorite drummer. I don't know. We can get into that
Some other
later,
time,
not on
yeah.
the podcast, but
Nate Smith's great. Yeah.
Cool. Well, I think that's gonna wrap up stuff today. Do you have like just like plug all the stuff that you want, and whether that be personal, your band stuff, Instagram, Facebook's, do it.
At Kabir Drums. That's my Instagram, YouTube, which I'm gonna try posting more on soon. I'm a little inconsistent. Got a couple things on there though. What else? Facebook. You can add me on Facebook if you want. Kabir Dalawari. Band social media wise, we're not really up there yet, but we will. One one thing worth plugging. I have my senior recital coming up.
Yeah.
April 17th. Which I haven't really started promoting that at all yet. So you guys are the first to hear about that.
Ooh.
April 17th, 4 p.m. at Piano Forte. April 17th. All original stuff of mine. So that'll be pretty cool, I think.
I'm hyped.
That's
for
the next
that.
big thing, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited. And maybe an album this summer with my original stuff too.
Ooh.
That's another goal. Before I go to grad school.
Yeah. Get one out. But yeah, just again, thanks so much for joining us here. I think we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was fun. Thanks, guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry if I rambled too much. I tend to do that.
No, dude, it's perfect. That's the whole reason we do this, and we love people that just ramble, because that's like, we don't want to use this just for like, information. We also want to use this to share others' passions, because we can talk about our passion, that's cool, our names on the sign, whatever, but like other people who are just like daily drummers or big time, we want to share that too. So thank you.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, if there's ever anything you guys want to talk about, like a specific topic with me, reach out, and I like to talk about that topic instead of going here,
Yeah.
For sure.
But yeah, thanks again. And this has been the Drum Break Podcast. I hope everyone has an awesome rest of their week. Peace out.